Coming up in the next 30 minutes, Israel says its troops have completed encirclement of Gaza City. United Nations says 4 schools turned shelters in Gaza Strip damaged in the past 24 hours. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to visit Israel and the Middle East says need to set conditions for durable, sustainable peace for Palestinians, Israelis alike. Innovation and strength of Indian food processing industry to be showcased at the World Food India 2023 beginning today. At least 7 people dead as storm Ciaran brings chaos to Western Europe. Schools closed, train services shut down and hundreds of flights cancelled. And in Cricket World Cup, India enters semi-final after demolishing Sri Lanka by 302 runs. Afghanistan to take on Netherlands today. It is day 27 of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Israel continues to press their assault against the terrorists. Its military says that it has completed the encirclement of Gaza City. Army spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said this, saying the offensive into the enclave is going according to the plan. He added that forces had been attacking outposts, headquarters and other infrastructure being used by Hamas.
The forces continue to dismantle the front defense lines of Hamas in the northern Gaza and to take control of central areas. We continue to intensify our operations and to advance according to plan and to the targets that we have set. The battle is ongoing as we have planned. In each battle, we have the upper hand, and that's how we move forward.
On its northern border with Lebanon, Israel's Hagari said that troops remained on high alert to tackle any threat coming across from the border.
We continue to fiercely defend our northern border and to strike from the air and land any attempt to shoot or infiltrate into Israel. I want to highlight that Israel Defense Forces is on high preparedness to respond to anyone who attempts to destabilize the security situation in the north. We are highly prepared on the northern border.
Meanwhile, amidst fears of conflict spreading to wider region, Israeli troops and tanks held live fire drills in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on Thursday. The heights were part of Syria until 1967, when Israel captured most of the area in the Six-Day War, occupying it and annexing it in 1981. That unilateral annexation was not recognized internationally, and Syria demands the return of the territory. Israel's government says it also fears that Iran, an ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, is seeking to establish itself permanently in the Syrian side of the border in order to launch attacks on Israel. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh has sent us this report of the current ground situation.
Fierce fighting continues in the Gaza Strip as Israeli army continued to pound targets, hitting the Jabalia refugee camp and also the Bureji refugee camp, saying that this is where the members of the Al-Qasim Brigade, the militant wing of the Hamas, are hiding. Meanwhile, the Israeli tanks have encircled the Gaza city. They are at the Gaza gates of the Gaza city, and fierce fighting is said to be on. Close combat is said to be on between the Hamas fighters and the Israeli forces. Israel announced the killing or the death of its battalion commander, the senior-most officer lost in the war so far. Till now, about 18 soldiers have been killed since Israel went in for a ground invasion. Meanwhile, the civilian casualties keep going up. The figure being put is well over 9,100, and about 33,000 are said to be injured. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip continues to become bad by the hour, with 16 out of 35 hospitals shutting down, including the Indonesian hospital, the Turkish Palestinian Friendship Hospital, because their generators have run out of fuel. Al-Shifa is hours away from shutting down, and the Al-Quds hospital, the surrounding areas of the Al-Quds hospital was bombarded by Israeli airstrikes. So the war is entering its next phase, with things becoming even more difficult for civilians, and it will continue to intensify in the days to come. Amritpal Singh for DD India.
And underscoring rising concerns, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be flying into a diplomatic maelstrom between Israel and Jordan on Friday. Now, this is the latest of the many trips he has made to the region following a Hamas attack and the subsequent conflict. The U.S. is pushing for more humanitarian pauses rather than a full ceasefire, despite calls from UN and aid agencies for more help for civilians in Gaza. Caroline Malone reports from Washington on this.
US Secretary of State Blinken is in Israel from Friday and is due to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He said just before leaving the US on the trip that he will push for more humanitarian pauses to continue to allow aid in and hostages out of Gaza, and to work on a more durable peace for the region.
Do we advocate pauses by both sides here, temporary, localized, to be able to get Americans out? To be able to get aid in? You betcha we do. That doesn't mean that we're calling for a general ceasefire. Hang on a second. There's a difference. There's a big difference here. And we understand that, as I said earlier, humanitarian pauses have to be negotiated, and you have to have a credible basis for doing it in a temporary, localized way.
US President Biden has said that he got Israel to pause its attacks on Gaza to allow some of its citizens taken hostage out safely. Around 80 US citizens have also been able to get out of the Rafah border crossing into Egypt.
And so we will be talking about concrete steps that can and should be taken to minimize harm to men, women, and children in Gaza. And this is something that the United States is committed to. I'm not going to get into the details here, but it's very much on the agenda.
The US supports Israel's right to defend itself, but there are calls from UN aid groups and even lawmakers for support for civilians in Gaza.
We are going to continue to stand with Israel's right to defend itself. And let's be clear and never forget what happened on October 7th, where hundreds, thousands, 1,400 innocent people were killed, slaughtered. Young people who were simply attending a concert. And so we are not going to create any conditions on the support that we are giving Israel to defend itself.
The House has just pushed forward a Republican written bill that ties $14 billion in aid to Israel to domestic spending cuts. But several Democrats in the House have also introduced a resolution for an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire in Israel and occupied Palestine. Blinken did also reiterate that democracies like the US and Israel have a responsibility to protect innocent civilians, and that is very much on the agenda, as is talk of a lasting peace, a two-state solution for security for Israelis and Palestinians. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
The United States on Thursday announced a new range of sanctions on more than 100 entities against Russia over the war in Ukraine. The latest restrictions target Russia's future energy capabilities, sanctions evasion, and a suicide drone that has been a menace to the Ukrainian troops and equipment, among others. The Biden administration on Thursday added a dozen Russian companies to a trade blacklist for supporting Russia's military. The U.S. also cracked down on sanctions evasion in the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and China. 7 Russia-based banks and dozens of industrial firms were also hit with sanctions by the Treasury Department. The latest measure targets a major entity involved in the development, operation, and ownership of a massive project in Siberia known as Arctic 2 LNG, the State Department said in a statement. U.S. also targeted the KUB-BLA and Lancet suicide drones being used by the Russian military in Ukraine. Washington has stepped up diplomatic pressure on countries and private companies globally to ensure enforcement of the barrage of sanctions it has unleashed on Moscow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed U.S. measures imposed on Thursday against Moscow as what is needed. In his nightly video address, Zelensky said that every sanction decision must work in full so that there is no chance for Russia to bypass the sanctions.
Grateful to the United States for a new and very powerful sanction decision. More than 220 Russian and not only Russian entities that working for aggression are now under US sanctions. This is what is needed. Critical sectors of the economy for the aggressor, sensitive schemes for terrorists, and every sanction decision must work in full so that there is no chance for Russia to bypass the sanctions. The power of sanctions is the power of the world. We constantly communicate with our partners for this purpose. The united world must only become stronger.
Meanwhile, Russian drones hit civilian targets and triggered a fire early on Friday in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Officials said that they were clarifying whether there were any casualties. Kharkiv Mayor Ihor Terkov said that the fire was being brought under control. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russian drones were still in air in areas outside Kharkiv and warned of possible attacks in western Ukraine, including Lviv region on the Polish border. A quick look at other stories which are making to the headlines from across the world. Final results from New Zealand's October 14 general election will be released on Friday. The centre-right National Party and its preferred coalition partner, the Libertarian ACT New Zealand Party, have won a razor-thin electoral victory, together securing 61 seats in the 121-seat parliament. This tally does not include the roughly 567,000 special votes, or about 20% of the total, which will be the final decider. Dwayne Kefidi Davis, charged in 1996 murder of hip-hop star Tupac Shakur, pleaded not guilty on Thursday in a Las Vegas court. The former gang member was indicted in September this year and arrested in Vegas for Shakur's drive-by shooting death. Mexicans celebrated the Day of the Dead by lighting candles that illuminated the area. Family members also held vigils and placed flowers, pictures and other items at family graves. The Day of the Dead is one of the most deeply rooted traditions in Mexico, celebrated by millions of Mexicans from all walks of life. In the southern Brazilian city of Florianópolis, dogs ride in elegance on their own bus to the school. Andre Bresson, a dog trainer and owner of the Equador de Says Canine Training Center, Daycare and Hotel, designed the dog bus, which uses leashes to secure puppies to seats, ensuring comfortable and safe travel. We're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Eldest Trump's son testifies in fraud case aimed at their family business. Former crypto tycoon Sam Bankman-Fried found guilty on all counts at fraud trial. And in the Indian northeastern state of Meghalaya, people of Khasi community celebrate annual festival Shad Nongkrem.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back. after the break. You're watching DD India Live and I'm Preeti. Let's continue getting more international updates for you. Eric Trump, like his brother Donald Trump Jr., testified on Thursday that he had no knowledge of the allegedly tampered documents. In a New York court, Donald Trump and his two sons are accused of inflating the value of houses and other assets in order to gain better credit terms. Jody Jacobs is reporting from New York on this.
Both Eric and Donald Trump Jr. have told the court here in New York that they were not involved in the questionable valuations. These are questionable valuations that now threaten to crumble their father's real estate empire. Eric and Trump Jr. were in charge of the business empire while their father served as president from 2017 to 2021. They have blamed accountants, claiming they are the ones that assembled the financial statements that were used to secure loans and insurance. Eric Trump even went further, saying he was not even aware that such documents even existed. Email proof was presented in court which painted a different picture, but neither vouched for the accuracy of the documents in question. The judge has already ruled that Trump, his two adult sons, and the company fraudulently inflated the asset values. Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen has also testified that Trump directed them to exaggerate the value of their assets, like the Trump Tower in Manhattan. The former US president has denied any wrongdoing in his criminal and civil cases and has accused the Attorney General and the judge of political bias. This is a miscarriage of justice, he wrote on social media on Thursday. Trump himself is set to testify on Monday, the latest in many courtroom appearances for the former president. Jody Jacobs in New York, reporting for DD India.
U.S. President Joe Biden will host leaders from Latin America and the Caribbean at the White House on Friday for the inaugural America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity Leaders Summit. The main focus of conversation will be migration, as a record number of people are making their way to the U.S. southern border. In a bid to stem the flow, Biden administration is expected to announce fresh funding for countries hosting the migrants. Tony Waterman has more from Texas.
The Biden administration has long maintained that the best solution for the migrant crisis is to create economic opportunity in Latin America so migrants don't feel compelled to head to the U.S. in the first place. And this funding announcement expected later today is meant to do exactly that. According to Reuters, the U.S. will expand its contributions to the Inter-American Development Bank, which promotes economic development in the region, and it will create new financing platforms for countries hosting migrants. Money that, along with funding from the private sector and donors, could help build out competitive regional supply chains, especially in industries like clean energy, semiconductors, and medical supplies. Not only could this money spur economic opportunity and thus reduce migrant flows, White House officials, according to Reuters, hope it could also blunt China's growing influence in the region. President Biden is expected to make the announcement during a summit with leaders from Latin America and the Caribbean at the White House on Friday. It's been more than a year since Biden signed a non-binding declaration with 20 regional countries to address the crisis, yet near record numbers of migrants continue to cross the U.S. southern border, straining resources not just in the U.S., but in every country the migrants pass through along the way. Tony Waterman in Austin, Texas, reporting for DD India.
Storm Ciaran claimed one life in Tuscany region of Italy on Thursday, including 6 others in Western Europe as the storm follows the path of destruction. Earlier, dozens were also left injured due to torrential rain and strong gusts of winds. Houses are damaged and facing power outages, whereas schools are closed. Airlines and train companies have also halted their services. Residents of northwesternmost region of Brittany, Italy, are also advised to stay at home. Around 350 people had to be evacuated as a result of a wildfire that blazed close to the coastal town of Gandia in the Valencia area of eastern Spain, according to authorities. Over 34 crew members were fighting the fire close to the village of Montichelvo, but strong winds made it difficult to put out the flames from the air, according to emergency services. Firefighters from all throughout the Valencia region were called in to put out the fire, and the regional government announced that they have requested assistance from the military emergency unit. India is all set to host the second edition of World Food India from 3rd to 5th November in the national capital, New Delhi. Partnering with the Netherlands, this edition will have Japan and Vietnam as focus countries. The event will witness the presence of both the Indian Prime Minister and the Indian President. Attracting food processing sector, the government expects an investment of more than 75,000 crore rupees.
वर्ल्ड फूड इंडिया में हमारे 11 केंद्रीय मंत्रालयों का इसमें भागीदारी है और उनसे संबंधित जो भी हमारे संगठन हैं उन सब ने इसमें हिस्सेदारी करने का फैसला किया है। जो देश में उसके बाहर जो देश इसमें हमारे सहयोगी हैं या भागीदार हैं उनकी संख्या 16 है, जिसमें नीदरलैंड हमारा पार्टनर कंट्री के तौर पर है और जो फोकस कंट्रीज है वो जापान और वियतनाम है।
In a significant development for the Indian expatriate community in the United Arab Emirates, India's Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan held a meeting with the principals of Central Board of Secondary Education affiliated schools in Dubai. The announcement of opening a new administrative office in UAE was also made during the meeting. The decision holds the promise of further strengthening educational ties between India and the UAE and fostering a sense of unity within the Indian community in the region. The minister acknowledged the diverse nationalities within CBSE affiliated schools in Dubai and commended their contribution to Indian academia and culture. All right, a quick look at other stories making it to the headlines from India now. Enforcement Directorate leaves the House of Delhi Minister Rajkumar Anand after conducting a raid for 22 hours. The raid was conducted on the civil lines residence of the minister on charges of customs evasion and illegal international transactions. Residents of Bastar district in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh are going to vote for the first time in assembly polls in 40 years. The 40 villages in the district were highly affected by the Naxalites, and due to security reasons and complex geographical conditions, polling stations were not established in these villages. Voting in the region will be held on November 7th in the first phase. In the northeastern state of Meghalaya, people of Khasi community celebrated annual festival Shad Nongkrem. The festival is a time-honored tradition that revolves around the form of dance and seeks blessings from the Almighty for a bountiful harvest. It offers a unique opportunity for both locals and visitors to immerse themselves in the rich tapestry of the Khasi customs. In the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, Ganderbal's Sonmarg and other highland areas in the valley received fresh snowfall, while the plains received light rains on Thursday, causing a drop in temperature. Up next, we get you updates from the world of business. Now, former FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried has been found guilty by a New York jury on all the 7 counts of fraud, embezzlement and criminal conspiracy. The panel reached its decision after 5 weeks of trial. Bankman has been accused of fraud, embezzlement and criminal conspiracy. The month-long trial had been an ordeal for Fried after some of his closest associates testified that he was key to all the decisions that saw $8 billion vanish from his FTX trading platform. Fried's defense lawyers, who objected to several rulings, are expected to appeal against the verdict. Wall Street's 3 main stock indices closed sharply higher on Thursday on hopes that the U.S. Fed has reached the end of its interest rate hiking campaign. The S&P 500 gained 1.89% to end at 4,317.78 points. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq Composite gained 1.78% to 13,294.19. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1.7% to 33,839.08. The Fed held interest rates steady on Wednesday, while Chair Jerome Powell left the door open for further tightening. A quick look at sports updates now. India demolished Sri Lanka by 302 runs at the iconic Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai to qualify for the semi-final, and that too with a dominating performance, ensuring a scoreline of 7-0 at the group stage edition.
India demolished Sri Lanka at the iconic Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai to qualify for the semi-finals, and that too with a dominating performance, ensuring a scoreline of 7-0 at the group stage. India's lethal bowling attack led from the front to restrict Team Sri Lanka. This is one of the lowest scores that Sri Lanka made at Cricket World Cup in ODI format. Sri Lanka completely failed to chase a target of 358 runs set by Team India. If we talk about Team India, Shubman Gill top scored with 92 runs, while Virat Kohli missed his 49th ODI ton after he was dismissed at 88. Had Kohli slammed 100 today, he would have equalled Sachin Tendulkar's record of 49 centuries in one-day internationals. Nonetheless, Kohli did reach 1001 milestone in ODI format in a calendar year for 8th time now. On the other hand, Siraj silenced all the critics, taking 3 wickets while Shami took 4. Together, a stupendous bowling performance by Team India completely dominated the game at the Wankhede Stadium. India is now all set and too confident to face South Africa on the 5th of November. Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India.
While Afghanistan will clash with Netherlands at the Iconic Cricket Stadium in Lucknow, both Afghanistan and the Netherlands are coming back into the clash on the back of brilliant wins in their previous games. Afghanistan took on Sri Lanka in the previous game, in which Afghanistan managed to register a 7-wicket win. On the other hand, the Netherlands took on Bangladesh in their last game and defeated the side by 87 runs. That's it in this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.
Turning crisis into